All right. Good morning. Teach Teach Better family. I was going to say administrators, but I guess,
It's
on
the whole
YouTube, it's
family.
going to be a
The whole
whole
family,
family
baby.
here, right? So if you were able to join us this morning, thank you so much. It was so much fun to see so many phenomenal administrators and educational leaders. And man, it was such a rich conversation this morning.
Yeah,
And I mean, I think it really was helpful that I had the presence of Jeff Gargas with me. So, I
definitely.
mean,
I
that's
think it would have fell apart otherwise. Clearly, I
clearly
think I said 4 words, so it's
the energy that was felt, though, just from your presence was
the energy of
immense.
Jeff being here. Yes, it was a good conversation though. Good crew as always.
Yes.
But good conversation. Um, and we can dive right into it. I think we started off with like the idea. What was your actual? I can't remember what your actual question was. It was spilling the beans, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah,
How do
well,
you
so
how do you
this
summon the energy? That's what it was, right? 'Cause I'm like, it was the energy, but what was the actual question? So the
yes.
question that Josh posed was, how do you summon the energy to conquer the day? And one recommendation that came up that I'm in full support of is a book, which is The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And actually, we mentioned that book, but then we also was mentioned that there's actually like a teacher's version of that too.
Mhm.
I've read The Miracle Morning, have not read the teacher's version. I assume it's basically the same with some
Yeah.
little tweaks. Um, but talking about that and going through how changing your morning routine and really embracing the morning has allowed, there's several people who talk about how that, whether they read the book or not, how just that changing that in morning and kind of embracing the morning and like debunking the fact of I'm not a morning person has allowed them to have that energy, which then carries them through the day. Which and you and I have had this conversation, Chad, and I have this conversation. When I get a good night's sleep and I'm up early, my day is completely different in a better way.
Mhm.
um, One of our administrators mentioned like that they've always been the person that if they've got 15-20 minutes to get up, get ready, and get to school, they can do that and they'll be on the game. But they love now, after switching and embracing the morning, that they've got 2 hours.
Yep.
They get a workout in, they can sit down and sip the coffee, stuff like that. And that's what I love. When I get up early and I have the time before like anything else, like my house starts to wake up, or before I have to worry about anything, I can get ready at a little bit slower, casual pace. I get a cup of coffee. I get to sit and like sip on it and enjoy it. Maybe turn on some ESPN. Maybe not. Maybe just sit in silence with some. Sometimes I'm not gonna lie. I sit on the couch with my coffee in silence in the dark, and
Yeah.
it's just like peaceful, which is good for my brain, and that just sets me up for the day. So I thought that was a really good conversation. And then another administrator, Josh, and then I will stop talking. I didn't get to talk as much during this meeting, so I got to talk now. I mentioned I really like this, that he said that he really like changed the, how do you say, the change the patterns of
Mhm.
what he does in the morning when he gets there. And this particular gentleman was talking about like realizing that people are what like get him energized and what get him energy. And he had been like getting in, he gets bogged into like emails and into the like the logistics of his
Mhm.
job. And he changed that and started like making a point that no, I don't do any of that. I'm out with the buses. I'm with my teachers out there. I'm greeting the kids. Which by the way is good for culture too, but just on purely personal level for him, it just changed his energy in the morning, which then propels
Yeah.
him into the day. So that great conversation. I really enjoyed the start of it. It was a good conversation, great starting question, Josh. So
Well, it wasn't from me. It was actually from one of our other
of
administrators. I mean, I've
course,
been I've been asking, on Facebook and Boxer for folks to, drop questions in there for us for each week. As many know, we aren't doing themes each month, so it was great to get that. I think the question was more posed with like, "Hey, I'm drinking an insane amount of coffee. What else is everyone else doing? Because it's not working." And I think this is something as far as like an energy hack. A lot of administrators fall into this. Some people were talking to about like coming back from break and feeling kind of sluggish. Others were talking about the afternoon, how they feel fine in the morning, but then during a certain time frame, they start to kind of feel that energy dip a little bit. So yeah, I think everyone really focused on the morning and changing their habits to make it a little bit more healthy. I know for myself, you were talking about email. When I would get up and go and check my email, like the anxiety of my day, the stress would start to build about going into the office or kind of like begrudgingly get in the car, knowing that all of these things were waiting for me. And so, yeah, I stopped that because it was just kind of getting me into this like negative mind frame before even starting my day. And email obviously is important, but at the same point, like I felt like I had to kind of put a barrier there for my own mental health because I started to have this negative perception of the job before I even walked through the door. So I just kind of stopped that.
Now, did you, as an administrator, did you have set times that you checked in on email, or were you always ready for the emergency? It's a tough balance because obviously as a leader of either a school building or a district, like you need to be available for emergencies, but
Yes.
there's also this balance of like when it comes to email it can just drag you so quickly and so far, even if it's not necessarily an emergency or that important. And so one tactic that some people do is like they've got set times that they check their emails. But I know some people struggle with that because like, wait a minute, what if I don't have its time for an hour, but in 10 minutes an emergency comes through and I don't see it? And sometimes that's just, well, there should be different ways for emergencies to come through. That should be a text or a call or a radio or whatever versus that. But like, did you have set times where, and then communicating people and say, hey, look, I check my emails at 10 o'clock, at noon, you know what I mean? Like, or were you just didn't worry about it when you first got there, so it didn't ruin your morning?
So when I was first starting in administration, I was 24/7. You can get a hold of me through email. I'd respond,
sure.
And I was emailing at insane hours.
2 a.m. on a Sunday.
Exactly. And people would be like, why are you emailing me at that time?
Yeah.
But I just felt like, oh, this is what I have to do. But then it was taken away from family time and it was taken away from my attention in other areas of my life. And so I felt like, as I started to go, I started to get more rigid about when I was checking it. And then finally I was getting to the point where it was like, if I leave the building, I'm not checking it. And I know my boss didn't love that, but at the same point, like it didn't change. If it was an emergency, I got text messages, I got phone calls, I got other ways that people got a hold of me. And there were plenty of nights where my attention was needed for, some type of student incident or something was going on beyond the campus. And of course, I made sure that was important. And I worked through that above my contract hours, but I didn't feel like that was something that I needed to be present for. And a lot of times the things that were emailed that were supposed or perceived emergencies were things that people ran down and talked to me about too. So like there were so many times I had conversations that were also in my inbox. And so it's
because they shoot you an email and that's not quick enough, so then I run down and get you anyway.
So it's just wasted time and energy. And so email was, although I find there's a purpose and importance to it, at the same time, it's also a time suck, both in the office and outside of the office.
Yeah. And most things, most days are not emergencies.
No, they are not.
And to your point, like I'm not emailing you with an emergency.
No.
Like I'm calling you, or I'm texting you, or I'm running down to get you, or I'm radioing if we have radios. Like you know what I mean? So yeah. So good conversation. So I mean, I think the takeaway there is as you think through your day and how you structure your day, and specifically in this conversation, your mornings, how can you make some adjustments and adjust the pattern of the energy that is coming in or going out, and embrace your mornings to set yourself up for a stronger afternoon. I think that kind of can go all throughout the day. It's like, all right, great, I've adjusted my morning. How do I adjust my that after lunch point, right?
Yep.
Like, because that's another, I got to get over that last 2-hour hump and stuff. So I think really thinking through where is your energy going and where are you getting the positive energy from, and can you get more of that to get through?
Yeah, and just changing it, sometimes even just small habits too, instead of having that, going in the front office and cramming down 3 donuts and having a sugar high that eventually makes you crash, like, maybe don't do that anymore, or, maybe you're dehydrated, there's other things too that might be, just maybe having an extra cup of water in the afternoon. I maybe even just taking a 5 to 10 minute break where you shut your door and you just decompress without having the stress of people around too. Like there are types of things that you can put in place that are tiny and maybe seem minute, but have a giant impact on the back end of your day.
Yeah, so true. So moving on, Josh, some of the other conversation, What was sort of, there was a few different places we went. What was sort of the
Yeah.
one that stuck out at you that we want to share right now?
Well, I think we were talking about just like the investigative process, when things are reported, kind of what
Hmm.
that procedure was, the staff training of that, because a lot of times, different terms and recognizing behaviors, and then, of course, consequences on the back end are misperceived or done incorrectly.
We're talking
And then
all
we,
about like student issues or issues
student
related
issues.
to, or
Yep.
either with or between students and things of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah, but and then also on the other end too of just like confidentiality as an administrator and what
Yep.
we can share with parents, what we can share with students, and then staff, and then unfortunately just the other side of that with the mistrust that may come with that
Hmm.
lack of information and
Yeah.
how we combat that with our teachers and our parents specifically, just with the idea that they think there's a lack of information, which then equals a lack of consequences that have been provided to the student and just kind of like where that comes from, where that originates. So, yeah, we were kind of all over the place with this topic, but I thought it
Yeah.
was a really rich conversation.
Yeah, and I think the general theme that you kind of touched on is the idea of making sure that your staff, you and your staff, and honestly your community, your parents, stakeholders, everybody, that there's the same page, or at least in the same
Mhm.
chapter, of what words mean and how you and
Yes.
your staff, how your team utilizes specific words. Some of the things that we talked about were like, bullying and anxiety and depression and, things of that nature that kids deal with and struggle with that can impact them and that you may have to address. Making sure that there's a common and an understood and very clear of, this is what we mean by this, and
Hmm.
this is, or these are the systems that we use for these different things, the systems for how we investigate, which you talk about,
Yes.
how do we level up a case that's more extreme versus maybe you can't, not as bad, when do parents need to be brought in, all that type of stuff. And I think because so many issues can, obviously there's some issues that like you just can't win, like, right, like sometimes there's parents that are going to be upset and stakeholders
Yep.
be upset and you're going to have a struggle, and it is what it is. That's part of the very difficult job you have. But a lot of times it's miscommunication or lack of communication
Yep.
that can lead to your point, that distrust, because when I don't understand you, I get worried, I get feared, I get confused, maybe I get upset, I don't feel heard. And now, you know what I mean? So I think that's really, it seemed like everyone sort of continued harping on the fact that like we need to make sure that we are all speaking the same language, that
Correct.
we are communicating clearly with everyone who may be involved and needs to be involved, so that when something happens, big or small, we know how we're supposed to handle it, who's supposed to be involved, and how we communicate that to all parties. I think that was a big takeaway from that one.
Oh my goodness, yes. I think there's, especially on the parent side of things, I think there's such a disconnect between understanding what is required
Hmm.
within a situation, when something is, you know, brought to the administration and there's an investigation and there's policies and procedures that we have to
Hmm.
follow from the state and from the district, and there's a whole legal process. And so like for a lot of my job as an administrator was essentially training the students, training the staff, training the parents on like what the process and procedures are, because they don't know. And so when there is a lack of knowledge there, then a lot of times, regardless of the party, they do have some mistrust, because when they have a gap of understanding, then typically what happens is that they insert a negative, right? So fill in the blank what that negative is, but it tends to not go well, and that's when you get upset parties. That's when you get upset teachers. That's when you get upset
Yep.
parents or students about like, oh, you're not doing your job, or um, like I said, fill in the blank as far as the negative. But for myself, it was trying to communicate as much as possible so they understood exactly, and there was no surprises, there was no misconception, and that's going as far as definition of what's going on to, like I said, the investigation process, timelines, procedure, and then as much information as possible on the other end with the consequences if one was provided.
Good conversation. Appreciate everyone's input. We had a great group this morning, so thank you to everyone that was there with us live. If you listen on the podcast, thanks for listening, or watching on YouTube or wherever you're at. I appreciate you being there. Make sure you go to teachbetter.com/mastermind to register. It is 100% free for administrators. Gets you into the private Facebook group, and obviously the links for our weekly meetings, which are optional, but on every Tuesday at 9 a.m. Eastern time. So even if you can't attend the live events, get in the Facebook group. There's a lot of great conversations going on there, a lot of support there for you as well. So I think that's all we got for him today, Josh.
I think so. It was a great conversation, and I can't wait to see everyone next week.
We'll see you next week.